Let's welcome Sam Hui from the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office. Sam, welcome on stage.
Cámbiale idea, no lo voy a hacer más.
And let's keep welcoming the last speaker, good friend all the way from Manila, Mario Berta from FlySpaces. There you go, sir. Andy, stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, South Sami, for the invitation, and thank you for letting me share this time with this amazing panel. The first thing I'm going to do is ask these guys to present themselves in 30 seconds so the audience can understand why we ask you to be here today. So please, Michael.
Oh, wow, 30 seconds, okay. Michael Lints, Dutch born and raised, 2 kids, living in Singapore, running a VC firm. We have 4 funds under management, 3 early stage funds, 1 late stage fund. Done.
Wow, we have 20 seconds more. So Mario, you can have an extra time. So.
Hi, I'm Walter Jennings. I'm visiting from Hong Kong. I had worked for Huawei Technologies in Shenzhen. Very first visit to China was in 1992. And I've lived and worked in Asia. Hong Kong is my home. Be safe, Hong Kong. And I'm very passionate about Asia and China, and if you aren't, then don't worry, it's coming anyway.
Please.
Everybody, Sam Hui from Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office, which is essentially Hong Kong's official representation in Europe. So I can see I'm the only public officer here. I hope I can provide you with a regulatory and institutional perspective on how to do business in Asia.
Okay, well, Andy, thank you very much for replicating Southeast Asian tropical weather in here. I miss it so much, right? So I'm Italian by origin, you know, nobody's perfect. And I have a Spanish corazon, let's say, and then I've been in Asia for about 10 years now. I was in Rocket Internet. I left after the IPO of Rocket Holdings. And then I built my own company, which is basically a sophisticated brokerage firm for commercial real estate.
So myself, I'm a partner at the Rental City, and the reason why they asked me to moderate this amazing panel is because I live in China for 2 years, and I also live in Singapore. So I'm familiar with the amazing opportunity of Asia. So my first question for you guys is why? Well, let's start with a very, very, very basic question, like Asia. What is Asia? Because it's a very short word. It's a continent, but it's a very big region. So for each of you, what do you understand when you think of Asia? So I'll start with Mario this time. I'll give you a break.
Okay, awesome.
Well, Asia is a tremendous and a fascinating mix of cultures, languages, history, colonialism, no colonialism, and so on. So when I teach Asia strategy in IE Business School, and the very first slide is a map of Asia, and I divide it into blocks because China is a completely different path, India is a completely different path. Southeast Asia, based on colonialism, has a kind of unified path. But we go from, I live in Manila, can you imagine we have the world's airport in the world for 4 consecutive years, and I fly to Singapore, which is the best airport in the world for 4 consecutive years, right? We go in cities and in countries that have GDP per capita of $120,000 a year or $3,000 a year, which is Laos, the poorest of them all, right? So understanding Asia as a whole requires a lot of time, a lot of patience, a lot of drinking, especially a lot of drinking, right? So you got to be ready to have a lot of patience on that.
So what is Asia for you, Sam?
First of all, Asia is not a continent. Asia is not an animal. It's a zoo in which you can find many different types of animals. In this globalized world, all big cities look very similar. So if you have been to Singapore, if you have been to Kuala Lumpur or Taipei or Shanghai or Hong Kong, you may come under the illusion that, wow, all Asian cities share some sort of similarities. I can tell you this is the worst starting point for you. The best starting point is treat Asian countries individually. You need very good strategy to differentiate the market so as to make a success.
Look, I'm going to take a different perspective. When I think of Asia, I actually think of the culture. And it's a very different way of doing business than what you would be accustomed to. I lived and worked for a mainland China company. And I find the more time I spend in China, the less I understand. And so therefore, I think I'm just starting to make progress. This is a part of the world that has China has lifted itself out of incredible poverty. They've made 400 million middle-class people out of a country of 1.5 billion. And that's in our lifetimes. I mean, in the last 40 years, this country has completely transformed itself. So it's a spirit, it's a mentality. It's very different from anything else you're used to. In the West, you're the superhero. In China, the community is the superhero. And that's a wonderful spirit, but it's very different. And it will take some time, but come on over. We're all very hospitable.
Yeah, so briefly for me, I think Asia is one of the most misunderstood regions in the world. People tend to talk about Asia in general, and they think of, everything is dirty and everything is busy and everything is sort of not well organized. I moved to Asia 6 years ago. The funny thing is, if you look at my kids have no understanding of black and white. And this is because they grew up in Asia. They have a very, very open mindset. For them, the world is dynamic. For them, the world is making friends from Japan, China, Manila, Amsterdam, London, and Los Angeles. And this all happens in Asia. To me, if you are below 30 and have nothing to lose, move to Asia tomorrow. Whether you win or lose, it will be the best experience in your life.
That's the second time I heard this.
Yes, I know.
In the last few years. For me, China represents now, so China was 30% of the GDP 200 years ago, before the Industrial Revolution, and it's coming back, right? So for me, Asia represents opportunity and the challenge of facing completely different cultures and different ways of understanding, right? You just said that you moved 6 years ago to Asia. Why?
So I'm Dutch, born and raised. For me, Europe was super slow. I'm a former founder, so I built my company about 14 years ago. I'm 44, by the way, so I'm quite old. So I exited my company, and I wanted to start a VC firm. And I had the biggest issue finding companies to invest in and finding LPs for our fund. One of my friends said, you should move to Singapore and see what's happening there. So I literally packed up my bags, told my wife, we're moving to Singapore. She was like, nope, not happening. I said, I'll go first. They'll be fine. What happened is we raised 4 funds in 6 years' time.
Wow.
This would have never happened in Europe if I would have stayed here.
That I can tell.
So that's my main reason to move to Asia.
I'm having second thoughts about Madrid now. So, Michael.
Walter.
Sorry, Walter.
No worries. Why did I move to Asia? I've made so many stupid career choices for all the wrong reasons. I followed my heart and not my brain, and I stayed. And I like challenges. I'm super curious. And when I feel there's something that I cannot explain and cannot figure out, I double down on it. And then what happened is I really fell into the rhythm. I fell into the style. You talked about the zoo, and Hong Kong is very different again from China. It's got a great blend of professionalism, but also respect, conservatism and dynamism. So it's very strange. It's a perfect place to live. You could think of nowhere else better in the world. But then right across there's China, and that truly is a zoo. And yet it's explosive, and it's so fast changing, and it's desperate to learn. And also there's so much to teach. I mean, if you're at all involved in mobile platforms or services, just get over there, learn Chinese and play on WeChat, because 100 years from now, all of the services we're using in the West will look exactly like that.
So, Sam, for you the question would be, why these guys, they should move to Hong Kong, for instance?
Hong Kong perhaps is one of the best landing pad for um, overseas friends because of the business-friendly environment. Hong Kong, you know, the history of Hong Kong. Hong Kong was a British colony. Therefore, in Hong Kong, we are very different from other parts of China. That is, we practice common law. English is our official language. And then the lifestyle is a very good mix of the West and Eastern cultures. And of course, Hong Kong is always the fiercest economy in the world. So basically, when you plan your career in Asia, you need to consider many strategic choices. For example, where to put your money. When you have scale up your business, is it safe for you to draw back your capital? Is it safe and convenient for you to visit the places of your business? When you run into trouble, is the legal system reliable and certain for you? I think Hong Kong is one of the best choice, perhaps alongside Singapore as well, for foreigners as your first landing spot.
Mario, you told me a bit of your story before. Could you
Yeah,
please
well,
share?
in my case, I have a softer landing because I was very young when I arrived first time in Asia, 24. And I was backed by bigger company. They were paying my accommodation. I would just have to do my job, right? Good or bad, whatever it was, right? Then I joined Rocket. It was my step into entrepreneurial journey, which was also soft landing. I didn't just stop a corporate job and we went from whatever, good salary to no salary. No, I have a softer landing in many cases. I think that now I'm a full stack entrepreneur. I'm building a resort. I have a bar. I have a club. I have a tech company. I have a real estate. I'm looking in dormitories, like just entrepreneurship is a disease in Asia, and with explosive economies. I mean, I go in small little street of Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh, I smell money everywhere, right? And I'm a money-driven person, so that's another thing. Asians, across Southeast Asia, there's a tremendous pragmatism, okay? All the crap that we have in Europe of things, that doesn't exist, right? Asians are extremely money-driven. There is not a population around them which so many different. Chinese are the Golden Globe, the World Cup of money driven, right? So if you guys are following success and money, that's where you find a good landing spot for Asia. But you will be extremely challenged by tremendous entrepreneurs that are extremely good and merciless, absolutely merciless. I mean, remember the story with Grab? The first things they tried to do, they tried to deport me. They look at my visa in the Philippines and they tried to deport me. There's a little problem. In my bar, the chief of immigration is my partner, right? So that's how I solve the problem, right? So be ready for a fearless battle.
I will say, though, in Hong Kong, one thing is that it is, as Sam said, one of the freest economies, but also the least corrupt.
Correct.
And also, we do have wonderful medical benefits, so there is a social net there as well. So it's...
Yeah, I don't get that in Manila. I don't get it.
No, understood. I'm just saying it's going back to the zoo analogy. We're maybe the zebras.
So we have been talking for a while about how exciting Asia is, but I know from my experience that you have ups and downs, right? So we agreed to share with our audience like real stories. What would be the things that you guys don't like? What would be those days that you wake up and you ask yourself, what the fuck I was thinking the day I thought of leaving Amsterdam? And probably have 1 out of 100 days, but what are you thinking those days?
Oh, yeah, well, a lot.
Haze, raining, haze.
Well, the haze is not the worst, I guess. So I'm Dutch, so we're pretty direct. If something we don't like, we just say we don't like it. We want to do business, we say we want to do business. Asia is about building relationships. There's a good thing about what Mario said. Entrepreneurs are definitely merciless. They work hard, they're very aggressive. But on the other hand, you have to build relationships for the long term. So if you think you can come to Asia, build a business within a day, know everyone, it's about building relationships long term. They want to see you more often. They want to drink late evenings. You have to go through all the process. And I made tons of mistakes going into boardroom saying, hey guys, let's make this investment happen. They're like, no, we're going to have dinner first. You're going to talk to the boss tomorrow. Then we'll have drinks. I'm like, okay, when are we going to talk about business?
It's all
Oh,
about dating. It's a dating
yeah.
exercise.
And
Everything.
they literally said, we're not talking about business this trip. And like, why am I here? So,
So,
we can get to know you.
I know there is a word in China for that, wanxi. Maybe you can explain wanxi. You can explain that a bit more in detail.
Yeah. Guanxi literally means personal relationship. I must say the old days when you can only do things through personal connections have long gone. In not just in China but in other Asian countries as well. But Asian has is very specific perspective on interpersonal relationship. It may not have to do with corruption, but you need to maintain a very good social and cultural network so as to lubricate everything that you do, including your business and including your everyday routines. So pay attention to guanxi or interpersonal relationship. It is a key aspect wherever you go in Asia, in Japan, in China, or in Southeast Asia.
Mhm. I can tell you that in some countries in Latin America, for instance, it's pretty much, it's not exactly the same, but you get the same need in a way. So, Mario, what would be the things that you don't like?
Well, I think one thing that, okay, so first of all, one day you wake up in Manila, it's raining for 15 days, there are floods, phone is not working, internet is not working, traffic is 3 hours, and I'm like, maybe I should move back to Madrid, right? But okay, then I go back on track. Right? I think one thing that really disappointed me, and no more than ever in the last months, was we don't have a typical business model that was very successful in United States, and a lot of the venture capital in Southeast Asia are completely FOMOs and fashionistas, right? So 3 or 4 years ago, we were going to grocery delivery company. There was some success, all the venture capital. Let's go, grocery delivery. Hey, don't you have a grocery delivery investment? Okay. Now, they did the same with Ofo Bike, and they burned $300 million in 6 months. They sued their own government, like all this sort of shit. It's just a joke sometimes, right? In my case, I have very little venture capital money, but I have 3 billionaires in my board with B, US dollar billionaires. And I build personal relationship with them. I went on a helicopter trip with them and so on, right? But none of them is a venture capital. I was the very first tech investment, but these guys understand the business, which is real estate. That's what I'm working on. So a technology like mine, they clearly understood what it does for them. And when I go to venture capital, they still think I'm a physical co-working space, although the first slide says marketplace. So most of the guys don't even open the deck. I don't tell you the number of time I hang up the phone over a call, like, have you went to my deck? And Asians are terrible liars also, right? Have you been through my deck? I briefly went through. That means they never opened the deck, okay? So I don't tell you the time that I said, dude, just tell me no, but tell it on my face, because I'm gonna chase you down until you don't call the police until you tell me no. Right?
So I can tell you that some of that also happens in Europe. I would say the VC game we can make it better, I would say. So what would be in your case, Walter?
Thing I dislike. Look, okay. I think there are two big problems in, and I'll just talk about my experience in China. Number one, there's a relentless work pace. I mean, it's fast. And so the ability to step back and reflect isn't really in the culture. It's like, let's move on and get the next thing done. And you pair that with a fast-growing economy and with an increasingly skilled workforce, it's really challenging to find talent. The minute people get some skills, they're asking for 15, 20% raises or moving on. And it's leaving a huge gap, a giant chasm. And so there's a massive challenge for businesses. You just cannot find enough people to go around. And just my slight pet peeve is because it's only Asia, when you're engaging with professional services firm, they kind of sometimes send their B team. And it's like, wait a minute, we've got 1.5 billion people we're working with, Huawei, 170 countries, and trying to get legal services, professional services, public relations agency, they had all of their A teams in London and New York, but nowhere near Shenzhen or Hong Kong. So, please wake up and smell the tea. It's coming from China.
Okay. Sam, I have a question for you. None of them said that the lack of regulation or the maybe not the lack, but the immature regulation is a hurdle. Like, in your view, uh, the state of the regulation in the region, being Hong Kong the most sophisticated hub, what we should expect in that sense? Like, if a founder goes to things of doing business in Asia, how they can navigate the lack of regulation, or where they should be aiming for in terms of hubs that they could be a safe haven.
Yeah, yeah. I think one thing, especially for Europeans entrepreneurs, you really have to pay attention when you develop your career in Asia, because Europe, of course, has a lot of diversity amongst different nationalities. But in terms of the trade regime and the standards being applied across the continent, you can see a great level of consistency. But in Asia, it's not like this. Just as Andy has said, Hong Kong is one of the most sophisticated city in terms of institutionalization. Everything is, you will expect having a good legalism supporting your business deal. But there are other regimes which you really need to navigate very carefully. And there's no custom union in Asia. For example, Singapore is part of the ASEAN countries. That 10 countries would be one of the major growing zone in the coming years. So you can't ignore that region. But while those 10 countries are in a bloc, they are trying to achieve greater regulatory consistency, but they are not in a custom union. That means when you develop your business, when you supply your business from abroad, or you develop a product in the region, you need to do your homework very carefully, and you need to navigate each and every individual country very carefully. And that's the reason why when foreign business, when they want to set up regional office, usually they pick only a few major cities as their starting point, like Singapore, like Hong Kong, like Taipei, other Southeast Asian countries, perhaps like Bangkok.
Okay.
But of course, this is the regulatory side. Another aspect which you need to pay attention is maybe you are too familiar with liberal democracies. In Asia, there are all sorts of political systems. And liberal democracies is not the norm. So you need to have that political sensitivity as well, because while you are doing your business, you need to deal with the governments. So pay attention to those aspects.
Very good, I think very good point.
Can add on concrete things so you guys can.
We have 1.5, like.
I'll be sure. I give you a concrete example. So for land, it's foreign ownership restricted in all the Southeast Asian countries. So this journey is 60-40. So you need to have, let's say, a Filipino 60% owner and 40% owner. E-commerce in Indonesia actually was the only country that went backwards instead of moving forwards, because the big e-commerce companies in Indonesia, like Tokopedia, they bribed the government as much as they could, and they increase foreign ownership restriction instead of deregularizing. So they're going backwards in that sense, right? So they tend really much to protect local players. And then there is one other phenomenon, which is the family conglomerates, which is only in Asia. We can argue that you have Telefonica, big group, Acciones, big group, whatever, but they focus on one or two line of businesses. In the Philippines, you have a company like the Ayala, which, by the way, she's getting married Saturday in Segovia, and they own the second biggest bank, the telecom, the real estate. If you buy an apartment from them, you can only finance it through their bank, and you can only use their telecom. I mean, the antitrust will eat them for breakfast, right? These things don't apply to Asia, right?
Not in Hong Kong.
No, they don't. No. Hey, you bring the first world mentality in developing world.
I think the message is clear. So we have 10 more seconds. We're gonna wrap up. We have said a few things that I think are very important to remember. So I would like to ask you guys to just name one thing they should have in mind when they think of venturing in Asia?
Don't be scared to fall flat on your face, because it's going to happen anyway.
Okay, Walter?
I'd say whether for business or pleasure, please come to Hong Kong. It's an extremely safe and exciting city. And despite the headlines these days, it's a wonderful place to make your home or your business.
Okay, thank you. Sam?
Startup sector is growing very quickly in Asia. There are many startup hubs popping up, so pay close attention to that.
Well, I guess I need to spend a word on the Philippines, which we have the most beautiful beaches in the world, top of the tree. Okay, CNN, Siargao, Boracay, and whatever. We have the best beaches in the world. That's it. That's what we have. I think you can all contact me, and then my resort will be ready in 1 year. So I give you a 30% discount.
Thank you very much, guys.
Looking forward to it.
50 for you guys. 50.